there is no self who is reborn, Buddhism's answer. There's something many people believe without question. It feels like there's someone inside, watching, feeling, thinking, a me, a permanent self. We look in the mirror and say, that's me. We hear our name and we respond, yes, that's me. This sense of I follows us everywhere. It feels so natural, so real, and in many cultures this idea goes even deeper. Some say we have a soul, a kind of invisible core that never changes. When the body dies, this soul moves on, perhaps to another life or to another world, but then comes a puzzle. Buddhism doesn't teach that we have a soul. In fact, it teaches the opposite. The Buddha taught something quiet but powerful, that there is no permanent self inside, no solid I that lives forever. This idea is known as anatta, no self, and if that's true, then comes the question, if there's no self who is reborn. This sounds confusing at first, maybe even strange. But the Buddha didn't leave us in the dark. He gave a very clear answer, one that doesn't ask us to believe blindly but to look closely at our own experience. Let's begin by looking at what we're really made of according to the Buddha's teaching. Chapter 1, What Are We Made Of? The Buddha reminded us that what we call a person is not a fixed thing. It's not one solid object, and it's not owned by anything inside. There's no unchanging self holding it all together. What we are, he said, is a process, a flowing, shifting collection of parts like a river that never stops moving. These parts are called the five aggregates. In Pali, they're called the skandhas or khandhas. The first is rupa, the body, the physical form, the skin, bones, blood, and the sense organs that receive the world. The second is vedana, feelings, not just emotions, but the raw sense of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This happens every time we see, hear, touch, or think. Some moments feel good. Some feel bad, some feel nothing much at all. The third is sanya, perception. It's the part of the mind that recognizes and labels what we experience. When we see fire and know it's dangerous, that's perception. When we remember a face or recognize a sound, that's this process working. The fourth is S, a letter 1E45KH, a macron R, a mental formations. This includes our habits, thoughts, decisions, and especially intentions. This is deeply connected with karma, the actions of body, speech, and mind that shape our future. The fifth is vijnana, consciousness. This is the awareness that experiences all the other aggregates. It doesn't stand alone, it depends on conditions. Consciousness when seeing is different from consciousness when hearing or thinking. These five are not static, they're always changing, always moving. None of them is a self, none of them lasts. The Buddha compared them to a flame or a stream. They arise, change, and pass away moment by moment, yet out of habit we hold on. We take them to be me or mine. This clinging creates confusion and suffering. So when we ask, who am I? According to the Buddha's teaching, there isn't one thing we can point to and say, that's truly me. There's just this flow of body and mind, always changing, always moving. This doesn't mean we don't exist at all. It means we don't exist in the way we usually imagine. The idea of a fixed self is something we add on to the process. It's a label, a mental shortcut. It helps us get through the day, but it's not the deep truth. And this is where understanding begins. When we stop searching for a solid me inside, we start to see clearly. We start to notice how things actually work. That's the first step. Understanding what we're made of, not as a fixed person, but as a flow of changing conditions. A beautiful temporary dance of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and awareness. Not a thing, not a soul, just the way things move. Chapter 2, Why Does Rebirth Happen? Most people think of life as a straight line. You're born, you live, and then you die. That's it. The story ends. But according to the Buddha, it doesn't end there. What we call death is just a chapter break in a much longer story. A story we don't usually notice, but one that keeps repeating itself again and again. This cycle is known as samsara, not just life, but the repeated experience of birth, aging, death, and then birth again. A wheel that keeps spinning. The Buddha didn't teach rebirth as a belief to comfort us. He described it as part of how reality works. In Pali, the word is punabhava, meaning again becoming. It's not just a poetic phrase, it points to a very specific process. Life doesn't restart because of magic or mystery. It continues because something keeps fueling it. That fuel is within us. It's not a soul or spirit. It's something we do moment by moment. That fuel is craving. Craving in Pali tanha is a deep, ongoing thirst. We crave to feel good, to avoid pain, to hold on, to become someone, to not become something. We crave safety. We crave identity. We even crave non-existence. And every time we act from this craving, it leaves a mark. That mark is called karma, our intentional actions of body, speech, and mind. Now, this word karma gets used a lot these days, but in Buddhism, it has a very specific meaning. Karma isn't some mysterious punishment system. It's cause and effect. If you plant a seed, it will grow if the right conditions are there. That's what our thoughts, our words, and our choices are doing. They're planting seeds. Some grow quickly, some lie dormant, but the energy doesn't vanish. These seeds of intention, driven by craving, don't disappear when the body dies. They shape what comes next. They drive the continuation of experience, just like fire moves from one candle to the next, not because anything travels, but because conditions are passed on. This is how the wheel of rebirth turns. Rebirth doesn't happen because we deserve it or because the universe assigns it. It happens because craving keeps clinging and karma keeps flowing. The mind doesn't stop, it keeps reaching, and what it reaches for becomes the next spark. There's no soul that jumps from one life to another, but there is continuity, a stream of causes and conditions, always flowing, always changing. That stream is carried by craving and shaped by karma. It's not a thing. It's a process, a flame passed from one torch to the next. The Buddha pointed to this not as a way to scare us, but to help us see clearly. Because once we understand how the wheel turns, we can also understand how to stop it. But first, we need to see how the process actually works, not as theory, but as something living in each moment. That's where we'll go next. Chapter 3, How Rebirth Really Works. The process. It's easy to imagine rebirth as something mysterious or far away, something that happens after death somewhere else. But the Buddha didn't describe it as a grand, dramatic leap. He taught that it's a natural process, not a reward, not a punishment, but the result of causes and conditions, especially the ones we create with our own mind. The engine that drives this process is karma, but not karma in the way most people talk about it. The Buddha didn't teach karma as some kind of cosmic scoreboard. It's not about balance or revenge, it's about intention. He used the word Satana, the will behind our thoughts, words, and actions. That's what plants the seeds. The more we act from craving, anger, or confusion, the more those tendencies grow. And the more we act from clarity, kindness, or wisdom, the more those patterns deepen too. Karma works like planting seeds in a field. Some seeds grow quickly, others take time, but none of them just disappear. They stay in the field of the mind. They influence how we see, how we feel, how we react. And when the right conditions come together, they ripen, not as some magic event, but as our next moment of experience, even our next life. But here's the part many people miss. There's no fixed self that owns these seeds. There's no one carrying them in a bag across lifetimes. According to the Buddha's teaching, the mind isn't a single thing. It's a stream, a flowing sequence of mental moments. In Pali, this is called Siddhasantati, the continuity of consciousness. Moment by moment, it moves, shaped by past intentions, meeting present conditions, creating future experience. And just like a river doesn't need a hidden soul to keep moving, the mind stream flows on without needing a permanent self. Each moment leads to the next, just like a wave rolling forward. What moves is not a thing, but a process guided by causes. When this life comes to its end, there is a final moment of consciousness. The Buddha called it Cuti-siddha, the death mind. This moment is shaped by our deepest karmic tendencies. It doesn't choose randomly. It leans toward the strongest habits we've cultivated, especially those linked to our final thoughts and emotions, and then without a pause, a new moment of consciousness arises. This is called Padasandhivanana, the linking mind. It's not a soul jumping into a new body, it's the next step in the flow. The Buddha reminded us that this transition is not controlled by an outside force. It's the natural unfolding of cause and effect. Like lighting one candle from another, the flame continues, but it's not the same. Or like pressing a seal into warm wax, the shape carries on, but nothing physical moves. There's also the image of an echo. The voice that produces the echo disappears, but the sound travels. Or a wave on the sea, it comes from previous waves, shaped by the wind and the depth of the water, but always new, always moving. Rebirth is like that. It's not something that someone goes through, it's something that happens. It's of conditions. This is why the Buddha never talked about a permanent essence moving from life to life. He never pointed to a true self hiding inside us. He spoke of processes, mental habits, reactions, energies that continue when we don't see clearly. And this continuity, powered by craving and shaped by karma, is what gives rise to rebirth. But when we see this clearly, not as a theory, but as something living in our own mind right now, we can also see something else, the path to freedom. Because if rebirth is a process, not a punishment, then we can also learn how to stop feeding it. We can stop fueling the fire. We can step off the wheel. Chapter 4, Rebirth is happening right now. We've seen rebirth as a process linking lives, driven by causes. Now, let's consider the nature of that process itself, as it operates not just between lives, but within this life. The Buddha taught that this dynamic of becoming again, of arising, changing, and ceasing, is the very fabric of our moment-to-moment existence. The Buddha taught that every experience we have, every thought, every feeling, every movement of the body or mind is not fixed or solid. It arises, stays for just a little while, and then disappears. This rising and falling is happening so fast we usually don't see it. We just feel like I'm here and I'm thinking this or I'm feeling that. But underneath those impressions is a rapid flow of change, a constant stream of birth and death at the tiniest level. In Pali, this is called Kanika Marana, momentary death. Each mental state, each heartbeat, each breath is part of this continuous process. A thought arises, stays for a split second, and vanishes. Then another comes and another. The same goes for our emotions. You may feel happy right now, but a few minutes later, a worry creeps in, then it disappears again. These aren't just small changes. According to the Buddha's teaching, this is rebirth. Each time a mental or physical event arises, that's a kind of birth, and each time it passes away, that's a kind of death. So when Buddhism talks about impermanence, anicca, this is what it means: nothing lasts even for a full second. And when it says there is no fixed self, anatta, it's pointing directly at this truth. How can there be a solid me inside when everything making up this me is always moving, shifting, disappearing? Understanding this doesn't just change the way we think about rebirth. It also shows us something very powerful, the importance of right now. Because if rebirth is happening moment to moment, then the choices we make in this very moment have real weight. Each intention, each action, no matter how small, shapes the next moment. That's karma in motion. Karma doesn't only wait until the next life to show results. It's shaping who we become every time we speak, think, or act. This also means that letting go becomes possible right now. We don't need to wait for some distant future. If each moment is fresh, if the past has already fallen away, we're not trapped. We're not stuck with a fixed personality, a fixed history, or a fixed identity. The process is open, flexible, alive, but this truth isn't only philosophical. It touches something deep in the heart, because once we see that nothing stays, we stop clinging so tightly. We begin to loosen our grip on thoughts like "this is who I am" or "this is how it's always been." We begin to soften to make room, and from that space, wisdom grows. According to the Buddha's teaching, this understanding of momentary birth and death helps prepare the mind for a bigger kind of insight. It shows us that what we call rebirth after death is just a continuation of the same process we're living right now, conditioned by karma, shaped by causes, flowing from one moment to the next without a permanent core. And so, even though the idea of being born again in another life might seem strange, the basic mechanics aren't strange at all. They're already happening right now as you listen to these words, as your thoughts rise and fall, as your attention moves from one idea to the next. This also brings us back to something deeply human. Being born as a human isn't random. It's a rare chance. The Buddha reminded us that this human life is special because it gives us the tools to see clearly. We can reflect. We can observe the mind, we can learn the Dhamma, and we can begin even today to walk the path toward peace. So even though the idea of rebirth might feel like a mystery, the real mystery, the living one, is happening in this very breath, this thought, this choice. And when we see that clearly, everything begins to shift, not because we've learned something new, but because we've begun to notice what was always there, a flow, not a thing, a process, not a person, a chance, not later, but now.